And Whitney, is there anything you'd like to add before we ask questions as well?
Yes.
I know you had some notes.
Yeah, I think that now that Bridgette said that, let me just give you 4 sort of ideas to hang on to as you're thinking about, okay, so I want to disrupt. Number 1, disruptors target needs that can be met more effectively. So a great example of that is Skype. When Skype first started, they didn't go after the corporate customers because Verizon would have squashed them like a bug. Who did they go after? The college students who wanted long distance but couldn't afford it. Okay? So think about targeting needs that can be met more effectively and playing in a place where no one else is playing. So you're talking to people, where are those places that you can play? The second thing is play to your own distinctive strengths. There are things that each one of you does uniquely well. Play to those. Think about IKEA, for example. IKEA didn't go out and say, I'm going to compete with Levitz, who I don't even think is around anymore. They said, I'm going to do ready-to-assemble furniture. And by playing to their distinctive strength, over the past few decades, they've become the largest furniture retailer in the world. And then 2 more quickly. Sometimes you need to step back or sideways in order to move forward. Think about what would have happened if Borders had been willing to embrace e-commerce. They might still be around today. Clayton Christensen, who I spoke about earlier, when he was 40 years old, he left a materials science company in order to pursue his doctorate at Harvard and then developed a theory that has changed the business world. But he was 40 years old. And then the 4th thing I would say is, as you're talking to people, let your strategy emerge. As you're brainstorming with them, you don't need to know exactly what the idea needs to look like now. Disruptors are in search of a yet-to-be-defined market. You just need to take 1 step forward, gather feedback, and then iterate and iterate. So I leave you with those 4 points. Take the right kinds of risks, play to your distinctive strengths. Sometimes you need to step back or sideways in order to move forward, and then let your strategy emerge. If you can kind of hang on to those as things that disruptors do, whether as companies or individuals, they may help you frame your brainstorming discussions that you're going to have over the next few days.
Awesome. And Dr. Presser?
You know, if you're not really, truly happy and excited every day with what you're doing, but you do it really well, think about it. You may be serving 2 needs of your organization. One that you serve a lot and you kind of rise to the occasion because you really need it and you're that good to do it. But there may be this other part of you that really wants to try something new. And sometimes that's really expressed in your desire to be a leader in some way. Don't silence that voice. That's one of the things that Teamability reports kind of bring out. They illuminate that idea that, yeah, you're great on the team doing this, but if you're just given the chance, and if you have people on your team and they're like that and they're kind of looking for that experience to just try it, be generous. Don't go by those rules that say, well, you have to have 20 years experience to do this before you can try this thing. Sometimes there are really low-risk ways to do it. And you know what? If they won't let you do it at work, figure out a way to do it at home. I think my first leadership job was in the nonprofit. It was in the nonprofit world before I realized you should really get paid for running an organization. But you know what? Right. Yeah, you know. But understand, I'm older than all of you. It was like that back then. It isn't that way now. But get the experience no matter how you can. And then figure out how you're going to apply it, either at this place, in another place, or maybe you're going to be so disruptive that you're going to start a whole new organization and be an entrepreneur. Join the rest of us who have done that.
Awesome. Any questions? We have one. Okay, Jenny's coming.
Making my way to you.
Julian? Thank you. I'm
yes,
Julian
that's Julian.
From Miami, ASUG Chairman for Management Accounting, SAP Mentor. I think there's two disruptions that we should try to differentiate: the bold, loud, and noisy, and generating fear, or the more long-term wave. And I would like to give an example here. I think some of you here are ASUG champions. You have received home recently a little Superman buddy. I showed it to my kids, and my 8-year-old daughter said, "How does that look for girls?" And I would like to take a look at the panels here. We have 4 women in an IT environment, And I think that is a disruption. It took a long term to get there. So I would just like to applaud that fact.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I have to say thank you for noticing. When I started out, and my tech street credits, I programmed the IBM 650 in machine language when I was in high school, which should give you an idea of how really old I am. I couldn't get a job at the company I wanted to, the one with the 3 letters, the blue company, which was, I had programmed their computer, but, it was a different world, and the world has changed. And thank you for recognizing that.
My question's slightly different. From a management perspective, as managers, we have to deal with change. When change occurs, whether it be a new software package being introduced and people have to learn something new, or a negative change where there's a major layoff, how can we as managers help those people involved in change deal with it better?
Any one of you experts?
I didn't mean to stump everybody.
No, I mean, it's a great question. Do you want to start?
Yeah, that's basically what I do every day. It's a matter of just normalizing the change. Everyone's personally trying to understand, what are you going to expect out of me? One of the things that we miss, that we don't really know about people, is how to really appreciate and respect them. And this has been an interesting piece of my kind of life work here. And that is understanding that you need to respect and appreciate people congruently with the way that they see themselves as contributing. So if they contribute by, let's say, going out and bringing cool new things in, if you don't say ooh and ah over the great new thing, it could be a technology, an idea, or anything, if you don't appreciate them for having gone out, taken the risk, brought something back new, and showed it to you, but instead you say, well, we don't need that now. If you do that, you've just demotivated someone and made them less likely to want to embrace the change you want. And that's true for anyone, no matter how they contribute. If they know that they will continue to contribute, but things may be a little bit different, but they're still going to be appreciated and valued for who they are, then most of the job is done for you.
Bob, if I could jump in for just a minute, because I heard you not only talk about changes, but things like layoffs and so on and so forth. And that's hard. Most of us in this room have participated in one way or another in those. And respect, especially if you're participating in sending people away from an organization, respect just comes, I think, from walking in there and looking them in the eye and giving them the best that the organization from a resource has to give, and thanking them for all that they have done. I think that's an important thing. And that's just a really unfortunate part of our culture, especially as companies continue to be, as we continue to seek competitiveness. The agile nature of business sometimes necessitates changes like that. But there's another piece to it, because the first obvious thing that you think of are the people that are departing, but there are people that are left, right? So, and from a turnaround perspective, I often come in and deal with the folks that are left after we've made some changes. And there are a number of different models for change out there. All of them, when you boil them down, tend to say the same thing. And if you peel it back, one key component of most change models is effective communication. So if you tell people, what's going on right now, and you give them a vision for where it's going to be and how they fit into that, and then you iteratively communicate along the way, people are more likely to understand why they're dealing with what seems like a very difficult situation. In my opinion, sometimes that's all the respect that they were ever asking for, and more than they may have received in the past. Because wouldn't you agree, sometimes you sit in a room and you're given instruction and no one seemed to think that they needed to tell you why. Sometimes I think people think telling you why means that they're going to engage you in the decision-making process. I don't think that always happens, and I think that people can be strong enough communicators that they can let you know, I'm sharing with you what's happening, not necessarily opening it back up for a discussion, because this is a decision that I'm now moving from to an operations perspective. And so I think communication is a very respectful thing, especially if you do it regularly and if you do it openly. And it's not a PowerPoint with 5 slides. This is what I came to tell you. Thank you very much, and I'm on to my next meeting. But rather, it's an exchange, because I don't know if I've communicated with you until I've received your message back that either confirms, questions, what have you. So I think as leaders in this room, it's an important thing to make sure that anytime you deal with change, especially if it's as unfortunate as things such as a layoff, that you're communicating and communicating and communicating, and people will, I think, at least understand enough about what you're doing to make a good decision if they can continue to participate in the process. And once they've decided they'll participate in the process, now you've got somebody that's loyal, now you've got somebody that's bought in, even if it's begrudgingly, because they think this is an unfortunate scenario too, but they understand that this is something that needs to be done, and they will work with you to move to a better day. And soon enough, you'll get to a place where the organization can't remember that they went through those layoffs, because they're looking at much better competitive days, they're looking at higher margins, they're looking at hiring, because now we've created a reason to grow, and good things can come from those days. But you've got to start with exactly what you said, those seeds of respect and communication.
I'll just add 3 questions that you can ask, I think, that summarize every person who's left in the rubble. They want to know, what is my job, really? Who do I report to? And how will I get paid? So.
I sometimes hear, am I next?
Oh, yeah. Okay, maybe that's good.
I think all of